my guest today is someone that I'm so excited about having here because every time I feature him and his work, I always get so much positive feedback from everyone listening, and he's always one of the most popular and requested returning guests, and that is the wonderful PJ Dixon. Welcome, PJ.
Thank you. Hello, my beautiful people. I'm super duper excited to be here again, and such a kind thing for you to say. I love you, and I love all of your people, and even if I don't know you personally, I have love for you. So for me to you, a great big squeeze, a big hug from me to you. I'm super glad to be here.
Thank you so much, PJ. So PJ and I have become really good friends over the years, and I just really, really love not only his message and his words, which are always incredibly inspiring, but I love who he is as a man, because I know that he is such an advocate for women and such an advocate for love, and I believe that his presence in the world makes a huge difference. So PJ, before we jump in, I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored by that. I want to be of service. And so for me, I believe that my life is in service to both God as well as other people. So it's a real opportunity for me to be able to move in that direction in a way that I think is benefiting people.
Thank you, PJ. So I know so many of the people listening will be familiar with you and your work, but I want to do a little formal introduction. PJ is a lifelong motivational speaker and an international transformational coach who focuses on results. Despite his disability, which was expected to take his life by 7, he chose to live and live well. PJ truly lives an extraordinary life, sailing, outdoor skydiving, indoor skydiving, trapezing, ziplining, hiking, mountain climbing, snow skiing, water skiing, aqua jet packing, and the list goes on. He's a former wheelchair athlete, international traveler, amateur watercolorist, founder of 2 nonprofit organizations and 4 disabled sports programs, a published author, 10th degree black belt, martial arts and women's self-defense instructor, and a meditation teacher. Additionally, PJ has been indicted into the National Hall of Fame for people with disabilities and was nominated to carry the Olympic torch through Tucson in 2002. So, wow, PJ, one thing that stood out for me is, and I always love reading your bio because, again, I believe you're just such an inspiration for people, but one thing that really caught my attention this time as I read this was that you chose to live and you chose to live well.
Absolutely. All of life is about a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were saying you think what?
Go ahead.
You were saying you think what?
I just think that it stood out for me because you chose to live. You chose to live well. And I think so often, this just stood out for me in a big way this time. And I've read your bio many times, but that just caught my attention this time because I thought sometimes in the midst of life, we forget that we have choice. We forget that we have that power to create in our lives. And I just think that's one of the main messages that you have to share and your life has to share. And we can empower people to remember that. To dust out those cobwebs and those beliefs that we don't have choice and that we don't have that power to create in our lives.
We are not victims. We allow ourselves to give up power and to assume a victim role. But even in the allowance, even there is a choice to say, I'm not going to be empowered. I'm not going to stand up for myself. I'm not going to make a decision about where I want to be. I am not going to say how I want to feel. And even then there's a sense of power that is leading to the perception of being disempowered, the perception of being a victim, the perception of not being in control of my life. But the thing is, you can never not be in control of your life. You can never not be empowered. You can never not have abundance. You always have abundance. You always have power. You always have that ability inside of you, flowing through you. You're connected to it. The thing is that it's a little like a Play-Doh fun factory. If you remember the Play-Doh fun factories, you'd stuff a bunch of Play-Doh in this thing and it had this big like just a little handle that you'd push down on and it would squeeze the Play-Doh and it would shoot the Play-Doh out the front through a hole. And you could put a filter on there. And that filter might have been a star or several stars or some little tiny holes so you can make spaghetti or a circle or, a diamond shape. So it was always about the filter because what was coming out was still the Play-Doh. And so it's the same with the universe, right? And we always have power because that's the way we are. We have conscious choice. We just may not always recognize as the fact that we have conscious choice. And so in this space, the universe is always pouring abundance into us. The universe is always pouring power into us. The universe is always pouring choice into us. The problem is, how are we filtering it? What are we filtering it through? Are we filtering it through, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve that, I'm not worthy, I don't have any control, I have to do this, I'm obligated, I don't have a choice? Because you'll get more of that. You'll get more of whatever filter you put on. So I just choose to have a filter of happiness and joy and love and kindness and generosity and enthusiasm and excitement. Why? Because it just simply feels better. I mean, the truth is it just feels better. And because of that, I want that emotion. I want that sensation. I want that feeling inside of me. And by default, it benefits other people. And people are impacted by that because I show up in this big way, but not bigger than you, just bigger. Why? Because I make that choice. So you could show up in a big way too when you make a choice and say, hey, this is how I want to feel. This is who I want to be. This is how I want to show up. And this is the authentic me. And this is what really Ready for the Right Guy is about. Are you ready? And ready in what way? Like, are you authentic? Are you checking in with yourself? Are you expressing yourself fully and completely in who you are and what you want? For example, just really quickly, I don't want to just like run with this interview, but I get excited sometimes. One of my clients, like 3-4 nights ago, sent me a text message. She's like, guess what? You'll never guess. And I was like, you have a date? And she's like, yes, I have a date. And I was like, yeah, that's amazing. Right. And so she talks to me about like, well, what should I wear? What do we talk about? This whole thing. And I'm like, well, here's some ideas that I think you should wear and the reasons why you should dress that way. But the most important piece of the conversation was, but remember, you've never met him before. And even though you've talked to him on the phone and you thought he was great, if you show up and pretend to be somebody different, then you're not in your power. And if you show up pretending to be somebody different, then you have to carry that with you. You have to always have that energy and effort and willpower to be able to show up as that person. But if you show up who you are, one of the beautiful parts of you is that later on down the line, you don't feel frustrated or resentful that you're trying to be or have to be somebody different. You show up as who you are. And the other person gets this great sense of who you are. And they go, oh, I like you. Or, hey, I'm not sure that we're the right fit, which is great also because that early on, we get to say, it didn't quite work out. Okay, cool. Versus 2 months, 3 months, 6 years in, and we're like, oh, my heart is broken because we're not a good fit. And so when you show up as your full self, what happens is it's great. Okay. Is this okay? I'm just excited. I just want to share everything. So let me just say 2 more quick things about this. Okay. We can expand on it. When you show up as your full self, there's this being that is present, right? Sitting across the table from somebody else in this date. There's this being that shows up that other people then have to deal with and they have to communicate with and they have to connect with. There's this level of respect because they go, wow, you're like a real person. And you're like, yeah, I'm a real person. So they don't just feel you as a physical being, but they feel your energy. They feel your life force. They feel your intention. They feel your authenticity. And they go, wow, I like that. This is a solid, human being. I can feel this is palpable. I can taste this. I can taste it or smell this. I can touch this. I can interact with this. And that's important because all too often the opposite is true, where people go, well, I just don't feel like I'm good enough, or I don't deserve love, or, I'm not worthy of it. And the problem is then they make themselves small. When you make yourself small, then the other person starts to not see you as valuable. They don't see you as an equal. They don't see you as a contributing part of the relationship. They don't see you as someone that they can lean against and trust. They don't see you as being big and dynamic and powerful. They don't see you as someone that they need to necessarily respect and appreciate. And now, look, they might, because they might have a really good heart. Excuse me. However, what I want you to really realize, and this is kind of the key point, is that if you feel like you're not good enough or not worthy or you don't deserve love or a romantic relationship or that kind of intimate level of connection, then you won't show up in an equal way, which means when they lean into you, you will collapse and get smaller because you won't believe you deserve it. And that means they're not getting what they need and want either. So you're both being cheated. It's a little like that game when we were kids or even adults, when you stand facing someone face to face and you put your hands up and your palms are facing them and their palms are facing you and your palms touch their palms. So my right palm touches the left palm of the person in front of me and my left palm touches the right palm of the person in front of them. Or, my left palm touches their right palm. And we start to walk backwards. And as we do, we're leaning into each other's hands. We can walk back really, really far, even further back than 45 degrees. Why? Because when we do something like that, what happens is I'm leaning on you and can trust you, and you're leaning on me and you can trust me because we're equal forces pushing against each other, not pushing in a bad way, but like supporting each other. But if we rewind that and we walk upright again and we're facing each other again, and as you start to go back, you start to lean into me, and all I do is walk back and I put my arms out. My arms are still out, but I'm walking back and I'm still standing upright. And somebody says, but PJ, you're not leaning into it. And I bow forward, but I'm still upright from my feet to my hips instead of that angle where from my ankles to my shoulders is one straight line. I'm not leaning into it, so you don't trust me. We're not equal. I don't feel like I can lean into you. And then there's that sense of resentment and that sense of disappointment and that sense of frustration. And this all comes back to the fact that you may not feel like you're worthy or good enough or you don't deserve it. And that means you're going to feel small, and that means you won't show up in the way, that powerful way where you're contributing to the relationship and allowing the person to be alive and vibrant with you and be reflected in you and be able to see themselves through you. And that's what people want. We're communal. We want that connection. So we need you and we want you to actually really look inside of yourself and say, who am I and how do I want to show up? And so this woman that texted me the other night texted me afterwards and she said, it was amazing. I was exactly like you said. I just did me. I ate what I wanted to eat. And I talked about the things that I was excited about. And we laughed and we joked and it was so much fun. It was the best date that I've been on in a really long time. Why? Because I got to be me. That's the secret. That's what I want you to realize. Don't be anybody else because you grow to resent it and regret it and feel disappointed. And I don't want that for you. I want juicy, delicious love, a love life, a love affair. I want a romance to remember, right? I want, when you talk about your partner to your girlfriends, I want them to be like, oh, I wish I had a man like that. To me, a boy makes his girl jealous. I'm borrowing this. I don't even know where I got it, but it's amazing. A boy makes his girl jealous. A man makes his ladies' friends jealous. A boy makes his girl jealous. A man makes his ladies' friends jealous. That's juicy and delicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think what you're talking about is so profound. We hear this word authenticity a lot these days, and yet there's so much conflicting advice. And I'm sure you've talked to people out there too who have so much advice. There's so much advice going around. You need to try this tip or do this trick, or you need to pretzel yourself into this way of being in order for someone to notice you or for someone to like you or for someone to fall in love with you. And a lot of that advice feels, first of all, inauthentic, but it also feels even manipulative. And then what happens is someone shows up on a date, as opposed to how your lady that you were speaking of showed up on her date based on your advice. Yes. People show up on a date with all this stuff like running through their mind. It's like, I've got to say this, I got to do that, I got to be this way, I got to hold myself this way. And, it's like they have so much going on upstairs that they can't even relax and be and enjoy the moment, be in the moment and enjoy the experience. And someone else, because they've got so much going on up here, can't feel them or experience them in the way that you're talking about here.
So let's look at the mind for just a minute. The brain, the actual brain. What does the brain look like? It's like these up and down folds and left and right and ins and outs, right? It looks like a maze. Do you want to be stuck in the maze of your mind trying to figure out the way out when you're on a date, when you're romantic? Or do you want to be in your being? Do you want to be in your body? Do you want to be in your heart? Do you want to be in your soul? Do you want to be in that being, that connection to the everything, to the all? That's where I want to be. So if you find that you're stuck in the maze of your mind and you're like doing exactly what Michelle just said, where you're like, well, I don't know, should I say this? Should I not say that? How is he going to respond? Is it okay if I do that? Should I order just a salad because, should I finish it? Like, oh, there's too much. Instead, just take a breath and just exhale and allow yourself the consciousness to shift and subtly melt and settle from your brain. Just melt and settle into your being, settle into your body. Anything from the shoulders down. Let it settle into your chest, into your tummy, into your thighs. I don't care, right? But let it just settle. Feel your physical body. Feel the life force in it. Feel the patience in it. Feel the generosity. Feel the nurturing. Feel the connection. Feel the presence. Feel the stillness. And when you do, what happens is you calm down and you can listen better. You can hear better. You can communicate better. And you're not worried in your head about whether or not he likes you. You're connecting with your heart. And you're like, wow, this is a great conversation. So instead of worrying about whether or not he likes you, whether or not you're saying the right thing, think more about, don't even think, feel more about, are we making a connection? Is this a fascinating conversation? Am I enjoying this? Am I being authentic? In your head, you're not being authentic because that's trying to manipulate and figure it out and find the key and find the secret. Don't do that. Come from that space of presence, because in presence, there's truth. And it's the presence that is the life force that animates you and animates them. And when the presence recognizes the presence, right? Namaste. The divine in me recognizes the divine in you. There's connection. That's beautiful. That's what life is about. That's the idea of coming back together. So presence, come, settle, breathe in, and then just slowly exhale. They don't even have to see you do it. Just breathe in normal. If you're like, oh, I'm a little nervous in my head, right? Just take a breath. And then when you exhale, as you're listening to them, as you exhale, just allow yourself to settle into your being. Allow yourself to settle into your body. Allow yourself to settle into your heart. Allow yourself to settle into that stillness, that comfort, that connection. Nest inside of yourself. And then what you offer out of that will be so sacred and so feminine and so gorgeous and delicious and juicy that it would just draw the attention in of whoever you're speaking with, man or woman, just because of the presence that you will be in. And that it just creates connection.
Yeah. And I love what you said about being in that feeling space and feeling it in your body and feeling what you're experiencing in real time instead of just this chatter, this mind chatter that's going on. And I love how you describe the brain as a maze, because we can be so caught up in that maze that we can't get in touch with how we really feel. And that's an important thing for both men and women. But for women, if you want to be ready for the right guy, a key is being ready to receive more. And you can't really receive if you can't get in touch with your feelings. If it's just the mind chatter going on, you're not in touch with, like, how do I really feel in the presence of this person? Do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel like I can be myself? Is this someone that I feel a connection with or a potential connection with? And the other key that I think is so important here, PJ, is it allows, when we're showing up in that way, it allows and gives permission for the other person to show up in that way, because they can feel or sense if we're in that kind of overthinking it kind of space where we're analyzing or everything. They can, there's a different energy that's going to be present. And they can feel that, and that kind of almost puts them like on guard because it's a bit manipulative in many cases, and they're going to feel like, even if they're not identifying that, there's going to be an energetic feeling that something not quite authentic or real is going on there.
One of the interesting things for me is that This is an honor actually for me. Many, many, many times, including yesterday, people will say to me, "Have you ever met a stranger?" And I'm like, "I don't think so." Because the moment I meet you, you become my friend. Unless there's really something really awful about you and I just want to keep an eye on you, right? If you're just the average normal human being or you're an amazing human being, the moment I meet you, you're my friend. Whether you agree with that or not, no, they're not really your friend, PJ, they're your acquaintance. However you want to define it, that's not how it feels in my heart. In my heart, it feels like, hey, we're friends. I know you, you know me, and there's this connection. And so when that permission is given to the other person to be authentic, also because you're showing up in that space of authenticity, that comes because in this case we're talking to the ladies. That comes because there's a natural love that is coming from you and a natural compassion and kindness for the other person that allows them to be who they're being. And you can love them. You don't have to be in love with them, but you can love them across the table as another person who might actually be kind of sweet and shy and nervous, right? And be acting a little goofy and not quite like the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. But there can be a love for them because you go, I'll bet they're a little nervous, right? And the more you settle in and actually have real dialogue and conversation, not polite dialogue and conversation, but it could even be provocative. And I don't mean sexually provocative. I mean, if they say something that you don't necessarily agree with, you could say, wow, that's interesting because for me, I feel it more like this. Then the person now they're stimulated, right? Because, whoa, hold on. Like, I feel like we're having a real conversation. What do you mean? Like, so you don't think that? So now all of a sudden we're incorporating our brain also. There's the emotion, there's the connection because we're really aligned and connected and communicating and we're focused in on each other and listening to each other. But then now we're engaging the brain and we're engaging the body and we're really here and everything else in the restaurant washes away. Everything else in the park washes away. Everything else, wherever you are, washes away. There's only that conversation and that connection because you're authentic. And people like that. It's exciting because we don't get enough of those real conversations. And so if you're like, hey, I'm out on a date, like, let me make friends with you. Let me connect with you. And let me just love you up because that's the right thing to do with anyone and everyone. And then, and look, I know some of you are like, yeah, but I'm a lady. And what about the danger? And what about creepy guys? And, there's a different kind of love between I'm sharing romantic love and I'm just like having this nurturing for you. And remember that I'm always talking about the difference between disempowerment, empowerment, and empowerment. And so you can have that feeling of I'm nurturing you. And if it doesn't feel safe for you or they're misreading that, you can simply, as a lady in your power, say, hey, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you very much. I'm going to excuse myself for the evening. Thank you very much for the invitation and inviting me out. However you want to end the evening, thank you for the date. It was really nice to meet you. You never have to go out with them again if it doesn't feel safe. But if you're disempowered, you won't feel that ability to stand your ground. And there'll be that little bit of fear. There'll be that little bit of apprehension. We don't want that. But if you're in that nurturing space, you're coming from that space of empowerment anyway, and you can sort of control that situation in a way that allows the other person to feel natural too. So they're not trying to gain your attention, which is trying to get power or trying to take power, because there's a natural dynamic in the conversation that they feel like like we're actually having a real connection, which is amazing. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants that authentic connection. So sorry to bring in a little bit of the scary, but part of, I'm a women's self-defense instructor also. And so for me, when it popped up on my head, some women might be saying yes, but. So let's address the yes, but. And remember, the yes, but is pretty minimal. So let's come back to the fact that most human beings are pretty good. And so why not just love them in a way that makes them feel safe, makes them feel connected? Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Absolutely, PJ. And I think, what we're talking about here, even in cases where he may not be your dream guy or he may not be the right guy, we're talking about ready for the right guy here. And ultimately, most of the women here want to be in a loving, committed partnership kind of relationship. But even in those cases where you might be with a gentleman, a person who is not going to be your long-term love match, you can still form these connections and have lovely interactions.
Yes.
And you can still be honoring, what I say is like honoring their humanity. I think wherever we can in dating, and of course your safety always has to be of highest priority, but wherever we can, as long as you feel safe, if you can at least see what you can appreciate or acknowledge about that human being. And when you're with them, for that time that you are with them, even if it's just one date, be in that place where you can see and appreciate what they might have good about them, or what you can learn from them, or how you could be inspired by them. I think that is such a gift that we can give ourselves and we can give others in dating, because as you appreciate qualities about men, even if they're not your dream guy, and you appreciate certain things about them, it helps you to have an even deeper clarity and understanding of what is most important to you. And you can get value from that experience, and you can leave them in a place where they're likely feeling better than they were before they went out with you.
Absolutely. And I really think that it's important to recognize that that level of empowerment, when you're practicing this, is something that strengthens you over the course of time, right? So I like to say that the skills and the practices that protected you and helped you to survive are not necessarily the skills and the practices that will nurture you and help you to thrive. And so let's think about that in the sense of, if I'm showing up from this space of being in my being and not stuck in the maze of my mind, and I'm there actually like communicating heart to heart and listening with my heart and connecting with my being and that energy that's flowing back and forth, then even if it is a one-time date and there isn't that connection, who are you going to be through the rest of the evening or the rest of the afternoon or the rest of the weekend or the rest of the week, right? You're like, oh, I've had a taste of power. And this isn't power over someone. This isn't power like egotistical or arrogance or any of that. This is like a confidence that occurs. This is the confidence. So I like to say committed, not rigid. So this is a commitment to who you are. And this allows you to show up in this level of power, this level of confidence. And what happens is the level of men that you attract will be up leveled also because of how you show up, because of your ability to communicate with them, to your ability to banter and play with them, your ability to hold your own ground. And all of a sudden, these men might say, wow, like she's a force to be reckoned with. Like I'm taken by her. I'm captivated by her because not only is she feminine, but she's also dynamic and powerful and fascinating and interesting. Like I'm captivated. You want him to be captivated by you. And the way you make that happen is by being so true to who you really are and your full expression of your power that he goes, wow, if I want to be with that woman, I have to up-level my game. I have to be kinder. I have to be smarter. I have to be nicer. I have to be more interesting. I have to show up better. I need to dress better, whatever it is. And if not, he knows that he's going to be cast aside. Not because you're rude or disrespectful, but because your standards are up here, and not because you're arrogant, but because you go, hey, I'm in my power and I get to have what I want in life. And so do you. And if you're not asking for something better, that's okay. But I am asking for something better. And so I want to make sure that I'm showing up in that space of the level of expression that I want to receive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also we can look at this as, let me backtrack a little bit. I know sometimes when women go out, and I'm sure it's true for men, but we're speaking to women. When women go out or they meet men again and again, and they feel like, oh, this is not my match. Here's another one that's not my match. Oh, this date didn't go so well, whatever. They can start to get discouraged and they can start to get frustrated and they can start to forget what we started with, their own power and their own choice in terms of how they show up and how they live and what they choose to believe. And also they can start to like become discouraged and start believing, okay, there's no one out there for me. But what if we shifted that? Here's something that I know you and I both believe. And we said, what is there here for me to learn or understand? How could this be part of the actual journey that's actually leading me and guiding me toward that person, to be ready for that person that is the right person? And the reason I'm saying this, PJ, is I had my own long and winding journey to love, became a first-time bride at age 43. Now been married to my wonderful husband, Benjamin, for 13 years. And after Benjamin and I had been married for a little while, we both talked a lot about our journeys to each other, because it was a first-time marriage for both of us. So both of us spent a long time out there in the dating world and going through all of those ups and downs and hitting every speed bump and pothole, and learned some things the hard way. But in looking back on it, and Benjamin and I both said that, in looking back on it in retrospect, and of course, hindsight is 2020. It wasn't that easy when we were going through it at times. We said, now it all makes sense. Like, all of those experiences were actually teaching us things, leading us and guiding us to actually be ready for each other and to appreciate what we actually have now. Like, it all makes sense. Like, in retrospect, I can see where even those hard things and disappointing things and frustrating things, they were teaching me things I needed to know to really be ready for the right relationship, for me to be ready for that right guy.
Absolutely. And, look, let's look at life like a puzzle piece, or like puzzle, because this is the way that I look at it. If each one of us is a puzzle piece, and the whole of the universe is the puzzle, spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, internally, externally, all of life is part of the puzzle. And each one of us, each one of our consciousness, each one of our beingness is a puzzle piece. We can attempt to force ourselves into relationships, or sort of like modify our shape to let somebody else connect with us. But if that's the case, we're not really being authentic. We're not really expressing ourselves fully and completely. We're not really a good fit for that person. They're not really a good fit for us. But when we are in our power, when we are like authentic, and we're not filtering through I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve this. When we're not filtering through the negative or the fear, what happens is we only show up in the fullness of our being. And when you show up in the fullness of our being, we go, oh, wow, this is a solid puzzle piece. And it matches in some places, and it doesn't match in some places. And then when it does match, it matches fully and completely. And it's like, wow, I've never met somebody that I felt so connected to before in my life. Why? Because we're both in alignment with who we are, and those two pieces match. We have this idea in the Western world that when people say, well, I don't believe in coincidence. That's wonderful in the sentiment. But if you really look at what it means, coincident means to coincide, which means to coexist, which means to be juxtaposed, which means to be right next to each other. And that's what puzzle pieces are. And when the things come together right next to each other in that perfect fit, it forms this brilliant image, this brilliant puzzle, this amazing picture of what life can be or what life is. And so if you are compromising that because you're a little afraid, you're a little nervous, you're a little worried because you've never been told that you're allowed to, because you're confused about what you really want, then you're not going to be in the fullness of your being. So that coincidence, that coinciding, that juxtaposition, that connection will not likely happen as freely and as easily. However, if you show up in that power, and the old school way is like, oh, but if I show up in that power, I'm going to run people off. I'm not talking about your masculine power. I'm just talking about the expression of who you are in that moment. Like, what do you really like? What do you really think is funny? What do you really enjoy talking about? Where are you really flexible? When you show up in these areas, when you're committed to who you are, but not rigid, when you're not rigid, but committed, there's flexibility. There's that ability to nurture, that ability to create space for somebody else. This means that you can match really, really beautifully. But that's because you're in that state of authentic power. When you lower yourself, when you make yourself small, when you diminish yourself, when you say, well, I have to do this, when you operate out of obligation, there's this resentment inside of you. There's this disappointment inside of you. There's this sadness, this hurt, this confusion. Like, why do all of this for you, but you don't do anything for me? Then you're doing it the wrong way. You're doing it for the wrong reason. You need to be actually doing it for you. And then if the other person goes, wow, that's amazing. Can I fit in with you? You go, sure, come on along. All of a sudden there's a connection because you're true to who you're being. You have a markedly more difficult time finding that perfect match if you are not empowered. And I don't mean egotistical. I don't mean arrogant. I don't mean power over people. I just mean that personal authority over yourself in your own life and where you're going, what you're doing, what you're experiencing, and the way you want to experience it. It's something as simple as when you go to the art gallery and somebody goes, oh, well, I'm gonna walk over here, and you go, well, I'm still looking at this piece, but I guess I'll go with you. Versus, okay, cool. I'm gonna stay here because I'm not quite done with this one. Why you study and you study and you study, and when you come back together, you have so much to share and talk about. But if you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go with you, right? You don't have as much to contribute. Empowerment means abundance. It means contribution. It means you have something to give. And so this is what we really want you to realize is that the most beautiful you will ever be is when you are true to who you really are. The most beautiful you will ever be is when you are true to who you are. And that means in your silliness, that means in your craziness, that means in your calm, in your stillness. But we also want to look at that because there's also that idea that people will say, and they'll hide behind, well, you should just love me for who I am. This is just who I am and I can't change. That's not true. And I'm not encouraging you to try to change someone or to change for someone. But I am definitely encouraging you to be open and receptive, to evolve with someone, to evolve into someone, to recognize that, oh, yeah, this is kind of cool about me, but it's not where I want to be. So like I said earlier, the skills and the practices that have protected you and helped you survive may not still be the skills and the practices that will nurture you and help you to thrive. And so we want to be able to look at that and go, okay, yes, this is who I am right now, but am I rising to the highest version of me? Am I in a state of empowerment, or am I in a state of fear and anger and worry and doubt, which is a sense of disempowerment? And so if I go, I'm not in my power, anger doesn't make you powerful, right? Confidence makes you powerful. Honesty makes you powerful. Truth makes you powerful. Compassion makes you powerful. Vulnerability makes you powerful. And in these spaces, again, it's not power over someone. It's the power and the willingness and the courage to express authentically and innately who you are at the highest level of your integrity, instead of becoming someone else and trying to fit into what somebody else wants you to be. You be yourself, and you open up the doors for other people to come and fit and link and connect to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is such a profound and important conversation. And I really appreciated what you said about you'll never be more beautiful than when you're that authentic and powerful self. And yes, it's not power over someone else, but it's owning your own power and being confident about who you are and what you want and what you desire, and being clear about that, because then other people can actually see you. They can actually feel you. They can actually see whether they could be that puzzle piece that could fit together with you. And we muddy the waters when we have on masks, when we have on the mask of pretending to be who we think someone else would want us to be, or to act a certain way or be a certain way. That thing that we started about, when we're thinking about all of those things and how we try to manipulate ourselves to appear certain ways. And yet it happens so often out in the world, because we get a lot of messages from the world that say you have to look like this supermodel, or you have to be, between the ages of 20 and 30, if you're going to be attractive to a man, or whatever the cases may be. We get so much messaging. You have to have the perfect body. You have to have the perfect this or that. These trappings and these beliefs can really muddy the waters. And then we start showing up with inauthenticity, and people can't really see us, feel us, because we've got on some kind of facade or mask.
Can we talk about that for just a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I really love what you're saying here. And this was something I actually wanted to talk about. I don't like clowns. because I don't like the mask. And I live in Tucson, and around May 5th, there is well, a couple of times a year, the Hispanic population will paint their face. The Day of the Dead ceremony, and it's a beautiful tradition, and I love the idea behind it. But if I see somebody that I know, even if I really, really love you and like you and trust you, if you have a mask on, I ask you to step back. Like legitimately, really and truly in physical world, I say, can you please back up? Why? It's just me. And I'm like, it's great. And I love you and I trust you, but I don't feel comfortable. I don't trust you because I can't see your face. But it's me. Like, you know me. I know, but I need you to step back because I can't see the micro expressions. And if I can't see those, I don't know who you really are. And so these micro expressions are not just on the face, they're also in the energy field that we put out. And so we want to make sure that what we're putting out is authentic, is true to who we are in that moment. There's something I wanted to say about this, and I started with one thing, meant to remember the other, and I'll remember in just a second. But oh gosh, I hate it when I forget that. Can you remind me what you were saying right there that cued me into saying this?
Well, I was talking about how we get all these messages that we need to be a certain way.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, you're amazing. Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So this idea that we're concerned about the way we look, right? And so if we're concerned about the way we look, we've got too much cellulite, we're a little too hairy, we, don't feel very like we're in shape, maybe our skin is a little blemishy. What we're doing is when we take that attention and that focus and that concentration, we put it on those things that are less than perfect, that are not the 20 to 30-year-old body that we used to have, right? And we put our attention on that. What happens is all of that energy that could be expressing outward is actually now being focused inward, and it funnels all of that attention and focus on the I'm not good enough. And to look, here's the proof and the evidence of I'm not good enough. I've got too much body hair, or, I don't like the cellulite on my thighs, or, I don't like this, just, what's going on with my chin right now, or, I just don't feel physically, good in my body. And so we put the attention on the I'm not good enough, so I don't feel good. And when we do that, then we're not expressing outward. There's not an energy pushing outward like the two people leaning against each other. There's yes, I see you, but with my eyes, but really I'm looking inside at what's not good. I'm not even looking inside at what's not good. I'm looking at the blemishes and the things that I'm afraid aren't perfect. I'm looking at only the outside, and I'm weakening myself, and I'm taking power away, and I'm causing you to feel like I'm not 100% committed in there. But if I go, hey, I may not like these things. I may not like that there's extra body hair, that I've got the cellulite, or that I've got, this zit on my face. But if you show up in that space and you go, yep, I don't like that zit, but what can I do about it? Just it'll go away eventually. Or if I don't like that extra body hair, I can wax it. Ouch, might hurt, or shave some of it, right? But I can do something about it. And if there's something that I can't do about it, like I don't know how to get rid of the cellulite or whatever, okay, they're not actually going to see that unless you see that. Many of my friends have gotten up out of the car and walked away from me. Family members too, have gotten up and walked away from me, turned around and came back to the car and said, hey, sorry, dude, I forgot that you're in a wheelchair. Why? Because I don't think about it. If I don't think about it, they don't think about it. If I don't give it attention, they don't give it attention. And so if we sit and think about the things that we think aren't perfect about us, it makes us smaller and it disempowers us. But if we go, yep, that's part of who I am, and maybe I don't like it, maybe you don't like it, but that's not who I am at the core, but this is who I am at the core. When I show up with that core, all the rest of the stuff gets forgotten, gets looked past, because love is blind. There's a great scene in the movie Man Without a Face with Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson is driving, short version, Mel Gibson is driving, and there's a little boy, his student that he's tutoring in math, is sitting in the passenger seat, and he's staring at Mel Gibson, right? And the passenger is on the right, and Mel Gibson has a scar on the right side of his face from being burned. And the boy is just staring at him and staring at him. And Mel Gibson says, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And he's getting like this sense of like judgment and worry and like, I'm not going to be accepted. And the boy says, when I look at you, I don't even see your scars. What he's saying is I love you now. Not in love, not in a weird way, but there was just that natural respect and love. And love is blind. We might see our flaws. We might see the things that make us less than perfect, but there's none of us out there that are perfect. But what is perfect is the soul, the spirit, the essence of who you are. And if you lead with that, they'll be blind to the things that you're worried about. And those things that you're worried about won't matter because it's about love. It's not about this external belief that I have to be connected and perfect to have this, that I have to be perfect to have this connection. But when I show up in that fullness of who I am, all the things that maybe are less than ideal are things that I forget, or the things that my partner will forget, and things that I will forget, because there will be the love that we're focused on. And love, my definition of love, is the willing exchange of oneself. That means ego, right? The willing exchange of oneself for oneness. And so the person looks beyond what you're afraid that they're going to see, and they only connect to who you are. And it's that oneness, that love that joins the love. That's where it's beautiful. Don't be worried about what you look like. I mean, if you want to get in better shape, fantastic. If you want to, take care of that cellulite, great. If you're worried about that, the acne, you want to take care of it in some way, do. But don't let that be the pivot point. Don't let that be the pinnacle of who you are and whether or not you can be accepted, because they're not going to see that when they feel you, when they connect to you spiritually, emotionally, physically, energetically. They're not going to see that. They're only going to feel the connection that enlivens them also. Love is about giving and receiving, and what we give is an expression of boundless generosity, and what we receive is filled and flavored with gratitude and connection and appreciation. And we lose all the things that don't matter: the physicality, the mistakes, the flaws, the errors, the less than perfects. They don't matter. But what does matter is that which is eternal, and that's the love. And so when you show with that, the other person will feel that, and they'll want that, because that's truth. That's truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was so beautifully said, PJ. And, I want to share one thing that I think, to just kind of add on to what you've said here, that I think might help. One thing that I know for women especially, I think because we know men are very visual, yes, is we compare ourselves to the magazine covers and the perfect glossy images and to each other and how we used to be back when we were in our 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. And I was on a coaching call with my Mr. Right Academy group last night, and one of the women was talking about how she used to be in television, and now she's 72. And she can see the wrinkles, and she can see, what she considers to be imperfections. And she's an absolutely beautiful 72-year-old woman who's lived a beautiful, majestic, lovely life. Mm. And she has so much to offer. And I was saying to her, I said, first of all, the man that's right for you is going to see your beauty and not your flaws. He's going to see who you are, this magnificent woman you are, and the life that you've built and the things that you've done, and this love and beauty that shines from you, and he's going to see your beauty. And I said, also, what if we thought of those things as like badges of honor for the things that we've survived, the things that we've accomplished, the wisdom that we've gained, the experience, and all that we have to offer. And we looked, instead of looking in the mirror for our flaws, if we looked for those things that are beautiful, mm-hmm, and began to see ourselves through those eyes, through those softer, more gentle eyes. And that I think is really important. And I think also in interviewing men, I've interviewed you and other men for my man panel, and they all say, when you care about and love a woman, you see her beauty. You don't see her for her flaws. And yet I think we as women in particular can be so incredibly hard on ourselves. And when we look in the mirror, we see our flaws, and that's what stands out for us rather than our beauty. And then this comparison factor gets in the way, where we're comparing like us on a bad hair day, so to speak, with someone else on the glossy magazine cover that's all, fixed up and perfect and had all of the editing done to the photograph and all of those kinds of things. And then we feel like we're falling short. And I just think this is something that can help in us being authentic, is if we can begin to see our own beauty, and even the things that we perceive as mistakes or missteps or things that we've made in our lives, if we can see that as part of our journey and part of what's made us who we are now, I just think that can make the biggest difference. I just think it's so important.
I would agree with you 100%. And I think part of the problem is women haven't been taught to be in their power. They've been discouraged from being in their power. And when they are taught to be in their power, often they're taught to be in masculine power, right? For example, feminism is not about femininity. It's about utilizing the masculine to get respect and power back and have more choice in their life. And if that's what's natural for you, that's okay. But women haven't been encouraged historically, really, to express who they are. But if you look at women who have this natural sexiness, this natural vibrancy, this je ne sais quoi, right? This draw that people are just captivated to, that people feel and see, and they're just drawn to her. It's because she's in the fullness of who she is. She's unapologetically moving through life. So one of the beautiful things about femininity is that the masculine moves life. The masculine goes out and manipulates and changes and shapes things, right? But the feminine is moved through life. And when you are in your greatest feminine and there's that space of openness, there's a sense of wonder. There's an innocence that women have that the feminine has, that the masculine doesn't quite have in the same way. And it's that innocence, that wonder, that pulls the feminine through life. And in that space, that's her power. That's her power. That's that connection. That's the fullness. That's the presence that she is embodying. She is floating in, and the presence is moving in and out of her. That's the fullness of her presence. And women aren't taught that because historically it might have seemed weak. But if we combine that with commitment, so we're not just sort of this airy-fairy floating around in curiosity and wonder and innocence, but we combine that that softness with the confidence and the commitment of, hey, that seems like it would be fun. Even if you're a tomboy and you're like, hey, I want to go ride dirt bikes because this seems really fun, or I want to wear cowboy boots and jeans and instead of, a frilly little dress because that doesn't really suit me. As long as you're being true to your own personality, then the real men in your life will be drawn to who you are and your being. But if you're running from that, if you're making yourself small or you're making yourself extra masculine and big to protect that soft side of you, then you're not being completely true either. So we want to be careful. Do we have too much armor on, right? Or are we just sort of floating away and there's no real connection? And where is that balance for you? Because notice the word that I use a lot is, are you in your being? And by are you in your being, I mean, are you in your body? Are you in your heart and your emotional space? Are you in your sense of spirituality? Is your mind present with us? Are your eyes functioning? Are your ears functioning? Is your emotional body functioning? Are your physical senses functioning? Because when all of those things are in enlivened and active, and you're aware of them, and you're allowing them to communicate to you, the conscious you, that presence, that beingness is where the power will be. And I think women have not been allowed to be this, partially because it is in a woman's nature to be nurturing. And that nurturing was taken for granted. And the rest of her wasn't encouraged to go out and express. The moment that she's taken for granted and allows that to happen is the moment she starts to lose her power. And so we want to make sure that you are appreciated and respected for who you are and what you bring. And that happens when you really value life and you want to share life with others, and you want to make sure that others realize that you're a lady and you get to be treated in a particular way. And if they can't do that, then that's okay. They're welcome to move on and meet somebody else. But you know who you are, and you know what's interesting for you, and they get to fit with you. Remember, you're this perfect puzzle piece. They want to match with you. They want to connect with you. Don't change who you are. Make sure that they go, wow, yeah, like I like who you are. I actually want to evolve myself so that I match with you. And they become better. I love this saying. This will be the last thing that I say about this. I love this saying when women say, or when men say, when somebody asks a man, well, why do you love her? And he says, she makes me want to be a better man. Oh, I love that. And I love that because what it's saying is she's classy, she's elegant, she's sharp, she's savvy, she's honest, she's sincere. Even if that means she's a tomboy, she knows who she is. And he goes, I'm just captivated. I'm just captivated. And I want to be the best possible man I can because it's an honor to be in her presence. Ladies, don't lower yourself. Raise your standards. Know who you are. Express who you are authentically. When you're by yourself in your home, or whether you're out and shopping, or whether you're at the grocery store, or whether you're on a date, just breathe who you really are. Be who you really are. And the more you practice this, the more that naturalness will come out, and the more fun you'll have, and the more intimate and close and deep your connections will be.
Yeah, that was really beautifully said. And that's a perfect note for us to start our ending on. So PJ, first I want to thank you for sharing so generously, because this has been a beautiful conversation, and I believe it will help and empower many women out there. And I'm always so deeply moved by you and what you have to share and by who you are. So everyone that's watching or listening, we're so grateful for your presence, and go out there and live beautifully and authentically. And remember, the world needs you. The world needs your authentic self. There's only one of you. You're the only one that can be you. So go out there and be you in life and in love, and bring the world your gifts. Bye for now.
Bye, beautiful people. We love you. Bye.